Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Andrew Campbell, and I'm going to lecture on treatment for toxic molds, what works and what doesn't. As you can see, I've published over 100 studies, and I've successfully treated over 17,000 patients. So this is a combined lecture from what is medical and scientific evidence and facts, as well as how it applied to these 17,000 patients. This is partially what I do. I'm the editor-in-chief for various medical journals and reviewer. I'm on the editorial board of several medical journals. I'm a member of the Royal Society of Medicine in the United Kingdom and England. And the information I provide, I don't profit from anything like so many other experts on their websites want to sell you this, want to sell you that, and the other. I don't do that. I don't think that's the right way to go about things, but that's my opinion. And this is a medical advice disclaimer, so please pay attention to this. And I wanted to show you this. Scientific American said that the next deadly plague, the growing worldwide threat of fungal disease. Fungal and mold is the same thing. It's like car and automobile. 5 parts. These are the key 5 parts, the successful treatment, okay, from toxic molds. Okay, I'm going to show you how long it takes for all this. The first rule is get the patient out of where the toxic molds are, or clean up the place and get rid of the toxic molds. Second, use the correct antifungal treatment. 3, take 8 specific nutraceutical supplements, not more. Oh, well, I thought I'd add this and that. No, that's it. Anti-inflammatory and low histamine nutrition. And last, you retest in 6 months, because that's about how long it takes for most people to get well on this treatment. Not the 1, 2, 3 years that all these other experts have you go about, because that way they make more money. Part 1, get the patient out of where the toxic molds are, or leave the place, have it remediated, and then when it's clean again and toxic free, then you can come back. I want you to watch this.
In 160 seconds, you will decide how this story ends. This is a story about us, the indoor generation, a generation that spends 90% of its life indoors. It all started the day we left nature behind. We filled our homes with lovely things and all the stuff we wanted. Our homes became places you would never want to leave. Artificial light replaced daylight, and we built our houses so that nothing could escape. We cooked and showered, breathed and played, slept and sweated. But we had closed ourselves in, to a point where nothing could get out. So when the air turned bad inside, we tried fixing it with chemicals. And we put in little artificial suns everywhere to make the darkness bearable. That's when things started to happen. Hard to notice in the beginning. Some needed help to sleep, to breathe, to not itch. Many of us even started to feel sad. So we turned on happy lamps to make the sadness go away. Then, scientists discovered that the air inside our homes is up to 5 times more polluted than the air outside. that the lack of daylight can affect children's learning and increase blood pressure. It turns out that kids' rooms often have the highest concentration of toxicants in the house. In fact, millions of homes are unhealthy to live in. They discovered that living in damp and moldy homes increases the risk of asthma by 40%. And I learned that millions of people like me suffer from asthma and allergies caused by a bad indoor environment. And so, here we are. How the story ends is up to you, because it's not written yet. If you care about the indoor generation, do something. Begin to think and live differently. Let light and fresh air into your life again. Even small changes can make a huge difference for coming generations. Learn how at theindoorgeneration.com.
So, what happens to people who live in a water-damaged building or work in a water-damaged building or go to school in a water-damaging? They may experience brain problems, musculoskeletal aches and pains, fibromyalgia, gastrointestinal problems, and symptoms of autonomous dysregulation. What is this last one? That's POTS and all these other issues. So, what is the health effects of all this? That they happen. Why? Because there's construction defects, leaks, HVAC condensation, issues with poor construction, weather, floods, hurricanes, leaking appliances and plumbing, poorly designed foundation, especially up in many states, basements, okay? Or the slope of the building lot where it leads to water accumulation under the concrete slab. And notice, folks, all this is from published medical studies. So I wanted to show you this because this table summarizes what they found in HVAC ducts, inside the ducts, dust from the refrigerator compressor, and a home with a dirty filter in the intake for the HVAC duct, you know, the filters that you buy. What I also want you to particularly notice is that the first column where it says aflatoxin, it's 0. Aflatoxins are not found indoors. So here's a couple of photographs. This is behind the fridge. Here's behind the stove. Unless you pulled it out, you didn't know there was this. And here's behind wallpaper. So what is the best test to see if you've been affected by molds? There are none. Why? By the way, I'm talking about testing for molds, not mycotoxins. So all these nasal swabs, by the way, Marcon's is a pure myth. It's pure bunk. Nasal swabs don't have, because mold spores are in the sinus cavities, not in the nasal passages. And every time you blow your nose or clear your nose, you're getting rid of that. IgE antibody tests for molds only tell you if you have allergies to them. IgG antibodies for molds only show if you were affected by them at some time in your past, years, decades ago. So there are no good tests for current mold in a patient. That's why we look for mycotoxins. And by the way, so many people make mistake of thinking this is a good test. Look at the date on this in the lower right-hand corner, please. It was August 22, 2013, 11 years ago. Now, part 2 is use the correct antifungal. So I hear people, I mean, I get 10 to 20 emails every day on this. So I want you to read this slide. Do you get it? In other words, if you go to Dr. Google, it's going to tell you that your hair is going to fall out, your teeth are going to fall out, your liver is going to fry, etc. But it's not going to happen. The other part is diflucan, nystatin, things like that only work for weak molds, which are yeasts, not the molds that make mycotoxins. So watch this slide and you'll understand. On the left column is the blue is fluconazole. It doesn't touch Aspergillus, Stachybotrys, Penicillium, etc. Okay, it doesn't. Itraconazole does. But then, but I read this and that and the other. Well, here are published studies. Has been if you just read what it says here, it tells you that it's available both in oral and IV, and itraconazole has been a valuable addition, okay? And it's been well tolerated with doses up to 400 milligrams per day, generally free of any adverse side effects. Okay, here's another study, because you didn't like that one, the previous one. It's been in clinical use for 35 years with established safety records. Now, this was published in 2017, so 37 years ago, so add to 35, 42 years of an established safety record. And here's a study that was published on the clinical diseases are rather difficult to cure, whereby the azoles such as voriconazole and liposomal amphotericin B give relatively the best results, which is what I've been saying for decades and in almost all my webinar presentations. So how safe is it? Here is a study on people with critically ill patients with acute on chronic liver failure and continuous renal replacement therapy. It's fine. It doesn't change anything. Okay, it doesn't make it worse. And that's in really sick people. Okay. Part 3, take 8 specific nutraceutical supplements at the right dose. Oh, and I got these emails. I'm also taking this and I'm also taking that because my whoever told me to do that. Read what it says here, 8 specific. So let's get into these. 1 is phosphatidylserine, 500 milligrams, okay? And I underline this part because it shows significant improvement in short-term recall or memory, immediate memory, vocabulary skills, and ability to recall words, attention, and vigilance. Oh, but my so-and-so told me to take phosphatidylcholine. Well, show me the study. These are from published studies. What about melatonin? Oh, I'm taking 20 or 50 or 40. No, 3 milligrams. This is what you need. You don't need more. Why? Because recent studies confirm the benefits of melatonin in reducing cellular damage due to toxic molds. Okay? And in the second little part there, melatonin's ability to protect neurons, those are nerve cells, from molecular damage due to a wide variety of substances, including mycotoxins. Okay. Take a high-dose B complex one day. Oh, I can't take that because I've got this. I did a genomic test and I can't take, well, excuse me, if you read this study, it tells you genomic and non-genomic methylation, okay? And furthermore, human research clearly shows that both a significant proportion of the population of developed countries suffer from deficiencies or insufficiencies of this one or more of this group of vitamins. So you need it to preserve brain health. Now, where do I get these first three? I get them from, and please write this down because otherwise you're going to send me an email tomorrow and saying, I missed whatever. So for these three, I get them from what a laboratory called Clare Laboratories, Klare. Okay, magnesium. It's the 11th most common element in the human body. It's a master mineral, and it's necessary for approximately 350 enzyme systems. So it's the majority of the body's metabolic processes. Up to 80% of the population is deficient in this. And magnesium binding sites have been detected in almost 3,800 human proteins that are essential for building, repairing, and maintaining your body's cells. 95% of the magnesium is in the mitochondria. So all these summits and whatnot and so forth about mitochondrial damage, go to the source. Don't believe that stuff. And by the way, notice who wrote this particular study. Well, here is some more information. It plays a role in energy metabolism. Again, it's in mitochondria. Magnesium is needed for you to be able to absorb vitamin C. Otherwise, you can't absorb it. And that also includes zinc, potassium, vitamin B complex, calcium, and vitamin D. Without magnesium, it would be difficult to absorb and use these necessary substances. And here you go. This is courtesy of Dr. William Wallace, PhD. If you look at the symptoms, migraines, I've used very effectively magnesium for treatment of migraines. Anxiety, irritability, insomnia, seizures, cardiac arrhythmias, blood pressure. Just look at all these. Muscle spasm, menstrual cramps, numbness and tingling, lethargy and fatigue, constipation, type 2 diabetes. Okay, so that's important. And by the way, I get magnesium from a lab called Jigsaw Health. Vitamin D, and this is from Clear Labs, 5,000 international units, one a day. Oh, I take 20. No, 5. Okay. Why? Because it helps against cognitive impairment, the dementias, and all that due to any things that develop due to brain cell malfunction or brain cell death. So low vitamin D is associated with more cognitive impairment, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, respiratory disease, etc. Notice who wrote this article too. Omega Q plus max. Just look it up on the internet. Omega Q plus max. Take 2 every morning. And it takes the DHA and EPA from squid, not from fish, because I'm going to show you that fish contain mercury. It contains L-carnitine for your heart, curcumin to lower your inflammation, coenzyme Q10 for circulation in the heart, and resveratrol, which is also an anti-inflammatory from the skin of red grapes. 7 is take probiotics, spore-forming bacilli. This is from microbiome labs, and it's called Mega Spore Biotic. It's very effective in the treatment for SIBO. It increases these 2 important cells of the immune system, T and B cell lymphocytes. It reduces the inflammation and improves recognition of patterns to curb autoimmune and allergic immune response. And it reduces the incidence of irritable bowel syndrome. Okay? Mega Spore Biotic. 2 every morning. Here's a picture of SIBO that was treated with itraconazole and the supplements. Can you tell there's a difference? And that's in 3 months, and it's taken by this person herself, and that was her words in the little caption. Probiotic, and again, this is that megaspore biotic. It showed that less than 10% of the usual lactobacilli bifidobacterium probiotics that you buy in stores, either refrigerated or not, less than 10% are able to get to the colon. The other side of that coin is more than 90% never make it, which means, and this is Dr. Simon Cutting wrote this study, and he wrote, it is best named as dead bacteria therapy. And then another one, a publication by University of California, Davis, looked at 16 probiotics from local stores to check if the strains claimed on the label match those that are in the bottle. Only 1 out of 16. Okay? 1 out of 16 actually matched what it said on the claim. And there's no studies that have shown that 200 billion colony forming units is more effective than 10 million, and that 15 strains are more effective than 5 strains. That's all bunk. Vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day, and if you can tolerate it, take 2,000 3 times a day. Why? Because our bodies we can't make and we cannot store vitamin C. Almost all fruits and vegetables contain some vitamin C, but you'd have to eat it all day long, and so many of them, about 30 oranges a day. No one's going to do that. And also, this is from Claire Laboratories. Helps in depression, especially in kids. Reduces uric acid levels in people who have gout or may have gout, and reduces the risk for a certain type of brain cancer called glioma, and it lowers your lipids. What more do you want? Here's a recent study that came out in November of 2023. And they looked at 60 dietary supplements, and 11% contained an accurate amount of the key ingredients listed on the label. The other side of that coin is that 89% did not, and 40% did not contain a detectable amount of the ingredient at all. So when you're taking 10, 20, 30 supplements recommended by, in quotation mark, so-called experts, look at this. By the way, if you have the mycotoxin, gliotoxin, do not take glutathione because it promotes gliotoxin-induced cytotoxicity. In other words, gliotoxin becomes more toxic. Let's take a look at part 4, an anti-inflammatory and low histamine diet. I told you we'd look at fish. Why? Because they contain mercury. Look at that amount of mercury. You don't want any mercury in your body. Avoid anything that contains all these things. And don't forget soy in any form. And don't eat anything that is canned food. And don't microwave anything that's in a plastic container. Foods to avoid: breads and breakfast cereals, cake, ice cream, sweets, frozen and packaged meals, soft drinks, fruit drinks, pizza. I know. Don't tell me. I know. I love it too. Salty snacks, packaged baked goods, chicken nuggets, fish nuggets, bottled dressings and sauces. We got to avoid this during this treatment phase. And by the way, folks, mycotoxins are not from foods. Now, here's a study from the Journal of Fungi. One has to admit today that the risk of acute intoxications of humans is low, at least in developed countries, where the amount of mycotoxins in food items is controlled by authorities. That's correct. And the amount of mycotoxin tested in foods have shown in many studies to be below the TDI, the tolerable daily intake, set by the FDA, the EFSA, European Food and Safety Authority, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, and the World Organization Joint Expert Committee on Food Additives. And so they did this to see what it would take to be toxic from molds being eaten. It would take 14 pounds of oatmeal at one sitting of rancid oatmeal, or 20 slices of bread to get you sick from mycotoxins in food. Part 5, retest in 6 months. Why? Because that's how long it takes to get back to normal using this normal treatment plan that is backed up by medical science and medical evidence. What is the most accurate and precise test? The one at MyMycoLab, it's 14 different mycotoxins. It gives you both the IgG, which is the toxic reaction, and IgE, which is the mast cell activation measurement of these in your body, not what's left the body. And what did they say about this test? To detect mycotoxins in human serum, it comes with significant accuracy, precision, and specificity. Okay, here's the bunk part. Okay, and this is from this study. Several popular organic acid tests claim to detect imbalances in gut, bacteria, and fungi. But most of the microbial markers of these tests do not measure what they claim to. And chemical antibodies in blood versus chemical presence in urine. Many labs focus on levels of chemicals measured in urine. But this is an indication of chemicals that have already passed out of the body that's left. You should measure immune response to the chemicals in blood. Okay? And this is from Dr. Vojdani. He was kind enough to loan me this, allow me to use it. So look for the body burden of chemicals and mycotoxin antibodies, not chemicals coming out of my urine, mycotoxin in urine, okay? Don't measure what's left the body, measure what's in the body. Here's a study that was done on GI map, the test that is so popular. They took stool from a healthy person and screened it to make sure it didn't have bacteria and parasites. Then they spiked it with 14 bad bacteria, bacterial pathogen, and 2 parasites. They sent it to 2 different labs. GI map was only 26% accurate, which means it was 74% inaccurate. Wow. Here's a myth, big myth. Mycotoxins colonize the gut, so you have to pull them out with binders. The binders will pull them out. That is a myth. What do studies on binders show? What do published studies, not what Dr. Google says, okay? In this study, they included kaolinite, clays, activated charcoal, zeolite, bentonite, and aluminosilicates. What did they're effective in neutralizing aflatoxin. But if you remember the slide that I showed you, aflatoxins are not indoors. So they are ineffective in all other mycotoxins. On top of that, they also bind vital vitamins as well as macro and micro elements such as zinc. So don't. Here's another detoxification of mycotoxins through binders. In this study, they said binders presented no sufficient effect against mycotoxins, okay? Here's more bunk. Urine test for mycotoxin, O test in urine for molds. We talked about those in the previous slides. The HLA-DR genetic test. Now that's a great one. I try to convince you that this exists. It does not exist in medical medicine or in science. In the 120 million published studies in the National Library of Medicine, there is not one that shows that this is connected to anything with molds or mycotoxins, okay? Second, they say this affects 25% of the population. Well, and for the United States of America, that's about 82 million people. It's not taught anywhere. Ask any medical school, they have no idea about it. It's not been published, but let me tell you something. There's another disease that's not this HLA-DR thing that affects 32 million people, 50 million less than this supposed HLA affects. What's it called? Diabetes. Can you believe that? 32 million Americans suffer from diabetes. 82 are supposed to suffer from this, yet no one knows about it, except for the followers of this particular group of people. The visual contrast sensitivity testing is bunk, MSH, C3A, C4A, all that is bunk. Look what patients say. This one watched my videos and wants to use this treatment. I was formerly seeing a functional medicine doctor, was trained by Neil Nathan, but I have not made progress on his protocol for 3 years. Not 6 months, 3 years. I'm telling you, not offering anything. 6 months is what it takes, and that shows, and you saw the studies that show these things work. Look at what this patient said. Past 12 months, I've been sharing the MyMycoLab website with all my mold remediation clients and recommend they take the MyMycoLab test. I've learned so much from Dr. Campbell and am so appreciative of the education and providing a real solution. I think it's finally having an impact with all the mold doctors who follow Shoemaker's useless binder protocol. I see many doctors, including Tom O'Brien, Jack Wolfson, now discussing mold more and more. I think Shoemaker single-handedly held up the health of many millions of people around the world. Dr. Campbell is unraveling the damage Shoemaker and his followers have caused. Here's another one. I have watched most of Dr. Campbell's webinars on my MyMycoLab website 3 times each. I am a health coach and was working for a US group that had a Shoemaker mold protocol, which was useless. I stopped health coaching at that program and focused on mold remediation in people's homes, as I think so many of my sick clients had mold in their homes without realizing it. Yep. So please go to MyMycoLab's YouTube channel. And if you sign up every time we do another program like this, we'll let you know. Now, what kind of webinars can you find there? Treatment, testing and treatment for toxic molds, Lyme disease, autism, autoimmune diseases, multiple sclerosis, breast implant illness, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, in children, PANS, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, POTS, and others. And folks, if you have any questions, and you can get copies of these, you can email me at that, or look at the bottom. You can go to my website, andrewcampbellmd.com. And the studies, these are molds, mycotoxins, the brain, the gut, and misconceptions, published in a medical journal with another doctor, a doctor who teaches at the School of Medicine at Washington University, which is in Missouri, and Lyme disease and mycotoxicosis, how to differentiate between the two. Many others. All right, folks, I hope this has been helpful to you. Don't be fooled by Dr. Google. You have here the medical and scientific evidence. Go for it. And also join us for all our webinars and what we call tea times. Tea time is where you can come and ask a question on any subject in medicine. All righty, folks. Thank you for listening, and watch the webinars on MyMycoLab's YouTube channel.